Well, thank you, John. I really appreciate it. It's indeed an honor to be speaking to everyone who's on the webinar this morning. As a little way of background, I've been the press office manager at Metropolitan now about 15 years. I've actually been engaged in press office communications for the Metropolitan Water District almost 30 years. That means that I have endured about 3 droughts that have hit Southern California. I think it's rather interesting that within days of agreeing to give this webinar, our governor declared an end to the drought, which I'm going to talk about today. So I don't know if one is tied to the other, but I truly appreciate any role that NAGC played in making my life a little bit more easier to get along with. Let's put it that way. I appreciate it this morning. Interestingly, while I am the press office manager and I can go on forever, let me get rid of this. Oh, hold on. Ooh. Did I lose you?
We see you, Bob.
Here we go.
Want to put that into a slideshow. There we go.
There we go. Interestingly, although I'm the press office manager, and certainly I was a busy man during the drought, I'm going to be touching on other tools, other approaches that we took to get the water-saving word out to Southern Californians this morning. So excuse me if I don't touch on really a lot of press relations this morning. It goes without saying that the drought drew incredible attention over the span of about 3 years. The press office at Metropolitan handled about 1,000 individual requests for information from media sources. We put out more than 50 press releases over the course of that time, which was extreme for us. So we were quite busy. But I think one of the more impressive feats that we accomplished was the new approaches that we took to get the word out. So let me get into that. Let me set the table for you if I can. Metropolitan Water District is the main water wholesaler for Southern California. We provide about half the water used by 19 million people in 6 counties. And as a water wholesaler, we only have about 26 member agencies, such as the City of Los Angeles and the County of San Diego. Water demand in Southern California is about 4 million acre-feet of water. An acre-foot of water generally meets the demands of about 2 families for a year. So annual demand is generally about 8 million households over the year. And our water helps provide water and helps drive a $1 trillion economy. With that said, I want to kind of set the stage for what we dealt with in the drought. I'd like to kind of walk through the years that lead us to where we are today. In 2011, we were actually coming out of the end of an actual wet year. And in 2012, we were actually able to top off our water reserves in Southern California. We had record water reserves as we entered the drought, which is in 2012. And we were well prepared to deal with the challenges that we felt we were going to face. But we never anticipated what we did face in the end. 2013, as you can see, the state is creeping into more of a dry condition, which really became apparent in 2014, when 82% of the state went into exceptional drought. What it really did is that it drove down the availability of our sources of supply from Northern California. Generally, we get about 1/3 of our water through what we call the State Water Project. It derived, like I said, about 1/3 of our water, about half the water used delivered by Metropolitan. In that 1 year, we received a record low allocation from the state of 5%. That was unheard of. Something in the previous 3 droughts we had never experienced. So I can't underline how incredibly difficult and challenging this drought became overnight. In 2015, things were still dry as the drought stretched into its 4th year. and we received, although we had an uptake in state water project allocation, water conservation was still very important throughout the state. And in 2016, we continued to, I guess, we were still in the midst of the drought, but we were seeing improved conditions. Only 43% of the state was in exceptional drought at that time. What it really was the unprecedented conditions that we faced in the state as a whole. I kind of mentioned the 2012, 2013 year. That was below average, and that's what we led into heading into the drought. Calendar year 2013 was actually the driest year on record. That means in more than 115 years of modern record keeping, driest year for the watersheds feeding into Northern California, which was a huge challenge. January 2014, we also experienced the lowest snowpack ever recorded. In the water year 2014, which stretched into about May of 2014, we had the fourth lowest runoff. And the state water project in that time frame was about 5%. So we were, in order to meet demands, we had to dip greatly into our water reserves that we had record amounts in 2012. But by 2014, we were drawing on those reserves to meet demands. And making matters worse, in 2014, we had record high temperatures for the state. So you add this all together, and what you have is a crisis. I want to touch on you briefly where we were throughout the drought. On the left is Lake Oroville. It's the largest state reservoir in California. The top picture is where it normally is in normal conditions. The bottom picture was where it stood in 2014, in the summer of 2014. Lake Mead, obviously one of the main storage reservoirs on the Colorado River, on the right, you can see Lake Mead being topped off probably about the year 2000. The Colorado River is actually has entered a 17-year of drought, so that is being challenged. That is certainly challenging states up and down that watershed, including everywhere from Utah all the way down to New Mexico, California, and Arizona. And Lake Mead today is now at record low levels. For California, you really saw the leadership that was provided by our governor, Governor Jerry Brown, in 2014. He declared, in response to the drought, he declared a state of emergency, state of drought-wide emergency. That was actually in March of 2015. And as part of that action, he outlined some bold steps to save water. He increased enforcement of water use standards. He streamlined the state's drought response. He wanted to invest in new water energy technologies. But more importantly, for the first time, he directed the State Water Resources Control Board to implement mandatory water conservation, water reductions in cities and towns across California. You had to reduce water use mandatorily by 25%, and that is a huge cut. Was really a sea change for the state. In response to that, our board in April of 2014 responded 2 weeks after the governor declared the drought emergency. We actually began restricting our deliveries to our member agencies. The cutback amounted to about a 15% reduction in supplies. If you didn't meet our allocation, you faced some stiff surcharges if you went over the allocation. And what it really did is challenge us. In Southern California, water conservation has always been a way of life, at least for the more than 20 years. But what we wanted people to do was really ratchet up to unprecedented levels in order to respond to this challenging drought. When we went to mandatory restrictions, it actually was just the fourth time we had ever done that in our history. And the last time we had done that was actually a few years before in 2011. But this was an incredible time for us. Excuse me. Also, in addition to declaring our water allocation, our board took a step of funding the nation's largest turf removal and water conservation program. The goal was simple. It was to get Southern California to use less water outdoors. Metropolitan invested, obviously the overall program was $450 million. Of that, we invested more than $300 million in a regional turf removal program. Ultimately, it resulted in removing about 160 million square feet of grass throughout Southern California, saved enough water to serve about 43,000 households in a year. Another part of that conservation budget was that we also set aside $5.5 million to get the water conservation message out to millions of Southern Californians. And we were going to do that through a multicultural, multilingual, and multi-generational outreach campaign. These are the challenges. We felt as though we had to have a strong message. We had to get out there quick. We had to have one that was really based in demanding action from consumers throughout Southern California, needed to be in multiple languages, needed to be creative enough to draw attention. Southern California is a happening, busy place, and you need to be able to draw the attention of consumers. It also needed to be consumer friendly. It needed to tell people in plain, simple language, what can you do to reduce water use? We want them to also tell their stories. We want to tell the successful stories that people were taking in order to cut their water use. And as always, you have to have a cost-effective measure in doing that. With that, we unveiled our campaign, which asked Southern Californians to take a turn and save water the summer of 2015. Our Turn Conservation campaign was rolled out in June of 2015, just a few months after our board took action to allocate supplies. This, as I mentioned, was a region-wide multimedia advertising and outreach campaign. It featured television, radio, billboards, transit shelter posters, but also we ventured into digital news, video, music channels, and online advertising. Social media played a much larger role than it ever had in the history of Metropolitan. And it all centered around the central message that if all Southern Californians do a little more to save water, it adds up to a big difference. I mentioned outdoor and television advertising. What was important about this campaign was how there was an individual call to action. We used simple but powerful messages. Every bit that everyone can do will add up to big savings. And now is the time for all of us to take our turn to take conservation to the next level. Turn had kind of a powerful double meaning to us. Much of water conservation begins with the action of turning something off. And now we were asking people to take their turn in encouraging words to take action. We used eye-catching images of indoor and outdoor knobs and faucets, handles and irrigation timers. Each ad illustrated the importance of turning off water whenever possible and provided tips on how to conserve. People were also directed to bewaterwise.com, which is our website portal, for more tips, videos, and rebates. And the campaign also used the hashtag Take a Turn CA and Be Water Wise. It was a multilingual campaign. As many of you know, Southern California is a very diverse and challenging media market. In order to reach more of those diverse audiences, for the first time, our campaign featured messages conveyed in 5 languages. We had English, Spanish, Mandarin, Korean, and Vietnamese. The campaign featured, and on the left you can see one of our billboards and transit posters. We also used outdoor displays in key facilities and locations in all 6 counties served by Metropolitan. Along with our television commercial, which aired in English stations and in all major broadcast stations in the Los Angeles and San Diego markets, the commercial also ran on 13 Spanish language stations, 7 Chinese stations, 4 Korean stations, and 2 Vietnamese stations. So it was very important that we had a broad outreach to all of our audiences. As far as radio was concerned, we incorporated more than 100 radio stations serving the region, including 25 Hispanic or Latino and 8 Asian language stations. Social media, I can't stress enough the role social media played in our drought response and getting the water saving word out. And the reason why I'm stressing that is because prior to the year 2014, we had almost no visibility when it came to social media platforms, Metropolitan as a district. We weren't on Twitter. Our Facebook had not been updated in years. We were basically derelict providers of Facebook information. We were not on Twitter. We weren't on Instagram. We weren't on YouTube. We ratcheted all that up in 2015. By May of 2015, we were on Facebook. We were on Instagram in September, YouTube in September, and then we were actively engaged in Twitter as well. And to really demonstrate how far we came in such a short time, we eventually came up with a way to turn bathing into a water-saving experience. We used internet radio. We called it a water lover station with songs timed for 5-minute showers. The whole thing is that people could tune into Pandora or the Spanish language Euphoria, which contained contemporary hits and oldies, many of them about water and rain. And people were able to pick their favorite song from the list. They could press play, turn on the shower, and hopefully they'd finish before the song ends. And the list included diverse songs, more than 100, including Waterfalls by TLC, Set Fire to the Rain by Adele, Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel, Purple Rain by Prince. So we used many more. So it was a very cost-effective outreach opportunity, but more importantly, it really provided more outreach to demographics and languages that we had never touched before. We also had special events, which really tied all three of our efforts together: social media, advertising, as well as media outreach. As you can see on the bottom left of this slide, you can see the incredible coverage we had on the day that we had a special event at iconic Randy's Donuts. That was really, if I could back up, we wanted to sweeten the need for conservation in the record drought. We commandeered Randy's Donuts' iconic sign to showcase the conservation message. The centerpiece was obviously that red dog, which was really the centerpiece of our outreach campaign. We supersized it. We cloaked the king-size donut on the roof of the landmark bakery. And then for the only second time in the bakery's history, they actually covered up the Randy's Donuts sign. So that's a 62-year-old history. Now I'd like to show you exactly, give you a little taste of how this was accomplished overnight. Here's a little video. So that was the great unveiling. It got incredible press coverage, but we also shared this video on a multitude of media platforms. We shared it on Twitter. We shared it on Facebook. It became very popular. It received, as I said, incredible coverage. We had at least two stations, television stations, on live when we did the great unveil that morning in April. Following 2015, we had an evolution of the campaign. We need to build on our take a turn advertising and outreach campaign, and we wanted water saving to take a step further by asking every Southern Californian to turn into a water lover. With the launch of our H2Love slogan and hashtag, this campaign once again used radio, print, digital advertising, as well as social media platforms to reinforce the message that conservation wasn't just a response to the drought, but was really a permanent change in how we used and valued water. One thing that we did experience, even though we had an incredible response to the drought from consumers throughout Southern California, media had picked up on the fact that they felt as though there was some backsliding in conservation, that we weren't meeting our conservation goals and demands that the governor had set forth at 25%. And there was a concern in 2016 that we were actually seeing a little drought fatigue. People were already backsliding because they were tired of hearing about the drought and the call for water conservation. Well, another challenge was not only did you have drought fatigue, but we also had less money to do advertising. Unlike 2015, where at 5.5, our advertising budget was actually reduced to $2.2 million in 2016. Now, in other media markets, $2.2 million might be sufficient, but in Southern California, that's a minuscule amount when you're trying to do any kind of television or radio outreach. So we really had to come up with unique ways of stretching those dollars. As I mentioned, the 2016 campaign had no TV. We had to rely expressively on radio. So we offered water-saving tips and reminders, really broadcast as weather and traffic sponsorships, not only in English, but in Spanish language, Asian, and Asian markets as well. We also went to community newspapers and radio. We broadcast on 35 radio stations. We looked to really reach new audiences through print ads placed in 53 community newspapers across the region. Obviously, a particular focus on Latino, African American, Korean, and Chinese readers. And once again, the materials were produced in 5 languages: English, Spanish, Mandarin, Korean, and Vietnamese. And I really can't stress enough how much social media became more important. Social media allowed us to fine-tune our messages to different audiences. It also allowed us to broadcast events, share information about our activities, and promote transparency. We had, allowed us to really kind of plan and plan out our well-thought platforms to support our messages. And we strategically used social media to ensure it was cost-effective outreach. And that was obviously played out in the fact that over the course of the drought, we had 30 million views of our Facebook posts. Instagram, we ramped up quickly. Remember, we had, prior to 2015, we had absolutely no visibility on Instagram. By 2016, we had more than 1,400 followers. We had more than 300,000 impressions and 2,600 followers on Twitter. We even became a Pokestop that used that opportunity. So we used any and all opportunity to get the word out about water saving. And what we needed to do was actually define a new way of looking at conservation in Southern California. We used the hashtags, once again, H2Love on social media platforms to have people share their personal stories about what they had done and how they had taken water conservation to heart. These stories helped celebrate everyday water heroes at home, in their gardens, at their schools, in their community. Also, we use geo-targeting, which is really the practice of delivering different content to website users based on their geographic locations, their genders, their ethnicities, their cultures. It really allowed us to do a lot better delivery of a message to a targeted market. And if you look at the costs, I had mentioned that we had a limited advertising outreach budget. Social media was obviously far more cost effective than our other tools that we had. To reach 1,000 people, social media cost us, our study showed that social media cost us about $2.50 per 1,000 people, whereas broadcast TV is significantly more. And direct mail, which a number of agencies in Southern California, our own local agencies use, is far more expensive at about $57 for every 1,000 people you reach. So we believe that social media really delivered. Another unique aspect was the partnership that we formed with the LA Galaxy. This is a first of its kind partnership that we had ever established with a professional team, at least to this extent. In the summer of 2016, We took our H2 Love water conservation message to the Major League Soccer pitch. We partnered with the 5-time MLS champion Los Angeles Galaxy to spread that word. And as part of that partnership, Metropolitan and the Galaxy worked together that summer to encourage fans and residents to promote the conservation efforts. That partnership utilized the digital media and social media with using our hashtag H2Love, both inside and outside the team's home stadium, which is the StubHub Center in Carson, California. We also became an official sponsor of the Galaxy's Protect the Pitch program, which was a club-wide environmental sustainability initiative. So this was a partnership that really paid dividends. We staffed exhibits at a number of Galaxy games, gave away tchotchkes, water bottles. We gave away lens cleaners, a number of things that we gave away. We also used geofilters so people could Snapchat and they could tweet from the StubHub Center and carry on our messages. We also had used members of the actual team to deliver our water-saving messages. Here's a PSA that features the goalie for the LA Galaxy, Brian Rowe. So let me play this for you.
saves is what I do. The one save I love to make is saving water. And the best way to do that, just use less. See? That's pretty easy. Just remember, to love water is to save water.
The LA Galaxy was actually a much more strategic move than I really played into it. The LA Galaxy have a very diverse fan base. Also, a lot of their fans speak multiple languages, and that was very important for us to reach. And we felt it really accomplished what we had set out to do, and we're carrying on with that partnership this year as well. And I'll explain that a little bit later. We also did Facebook Live broadcasts, which drew nearly 15,000 views, and we used Johnny Ray Diaz, who some of you may recognize. He's a character actor. He's been on such things as, hold on, I have his, he's been on NCIS, he was on CSI, so he has a very diverse TV and movie background, and this is what we did with him.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Johnny Ray Diaz coming to you guys from H2 Love Live from the H2 Love booth here at the StubHub Center, home of your very own LA Galaxy. Now, we're out here for H2 Love, and you might be asking yourself, well, what is H2 Love? H2 Love is a proud sponsor of the LA Galaxy, and they have a simple message: love water, save water. Now remember, we are still in one of the worst droughts in history, and we need your help to get back on track. Now, we're not out of the woods yet. We made some great strides this last year with a 25% reduction since the previous year. But we still have a long way to go. So we're out here promoting, celebrating, saving water. We've got the H2 Love area over here. We've got a spin the wheel section. We've got a bunch of different prizes. We've got t-shirts that are given away with a trivia question asked by yours truly. We've got water bottles.
So I think that gives you a little taste of what we did. We also, as I mentioned, we used H2 Love geofilters. We made those available to Snapchat users so fans could share their love for the team and water conservation on the fastest growing social network among millennials. And what did it mean? This is where really, when it came to impressions, this is where social media really paid off. Over the course of 2015-2016, we made more than 1.5 billion impressions on consumers throughout Southern California, and that was incredibly important. It's far more than we ever reached before, and social media played a huge role in that. Other measures of our success, conservation was up to 26% at the height of the drought. Obviously, we had the largest rebate program in the U.S., and that was really driven by turf removal. And visits to our website were up nearly 400% during the drought. We were always learning, though. You know, we learned that clear messaging works in many languages. You need simple visuals, colors, and kind of a white backdrop made the most sense as far as making the images pop. And that rigor really we applied to the process kind of paid off in the execution. It's really a clear message that people were impressed with. Another takeaway was that we learned in the research we did at the front end really was borne out. We did focus groups and post-campaign surveys. It really showed us how we need to tinker with our message between years 2015, 2016. So it allowed us to make adjustments on the fly, but in a very short time frame with extreme discipline, we went from concepts and research to campaign development and implementation. And with very little time, the team, which was obviously Metropolitan staff and our advertising firms and their subs, we worked day and night, drove all over the Southland, talked to a lot of people, including our local water agencies, that made it happen. And by having the team we did, we obviously got a lot of value with our partnering agencies. It was collaborative, and it produced a body of work that really worked in terms of message, reaching our diverse audiences, both culturally and languages and ages. And the media coverage of our very iconic logo and campaign pieces was extremely high. So it really, and it helped drive a high public interest in drought and water conservation, we found. Well, I kind of mentioned that now that we had scheduled this webinar this morning, the drought has officially been declared over by Governor Brown. What does that mean for Southern California? Well, we're actually transitioning the H2 Love campaign as a Conservation for Life campaign. We're using the existing H2 Love creative materials for a spring campaign. It allows us to expedite production and placements. We also rolled out H2 Love graphics throughout the region using billboards and transit shelters. Here's an example of the billboards that we unveiled in March of this year. It uses a 1960s vintage vibe and a timeless message to keep saving and keep on loving water. It's part of a $1.3 million advertising campaign. It features our H2 Love logo against a bright blue water-inspired backdrop that really aims to combat conservation fatigue by grabbing attention with a retro design. It also includes new taglines, which are intended to inspire the heart behind conservation. Loving water means saving water. Saving water matters here. Love water, save water always. And that message was carried on nearly 500 billboards and transit shelters across the region, once again in Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese. We also wrapped trains on the commuter train lines, the Gold Line, the Blue Line, the Expo Line in Los Angeles with the H2 logo. They were seen throughout the Los Angeles region. We also did bus wraps for a couple selected long-range bus routes. So these were buses that spent hours on the freeways throughout Southern California, but to catch as many commuters as possible. But as part of this, we also expanded our digital strategy. We want to reach as many diverse audiences as possible. We partnered with companies that provide content to many websites and online publications, including Sunset, Videology, the Los Angeles Times. They were able to take our campaign objectives, optimize our messaging on water conservation, and deliver it to gardeners, home improvement centers, and other areas where Southern Californians were looking to help save water. And we believe that we turned the corner. I mentioned a lot of what we faced heading into 2014, 2015, and 2016. Obviously, the low, the extreme hot weather, the dry weather, the low water availability. But in 2017, what we found is that we've experienced one of the wettest years on record. We had the wettest January in record to the watershed that actually feeds into the state water system, and the most snow ever fell in 1 month. They had 63 feet of snow that fell in Lake Tahoe, and in February and March, the Oroville Spillway, which actually drew media attention because it was feared that it would actually collapse, released greater releases than never, ever before. So today we stand at an 85% allocation, which is obviously a vast improvement of what we've seen in previous years. The summary, our planning investments in careful management helped mitigate the most severe impacts of a drought, the greatest drought we had ever seen. We took immediate actions to prepare for 2017 and beyond by including our conservation message in all of our materials. But more long-term investments are needed, including what we call the California Water Fix, which would help modernize the state water system in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. We also need to invest in more storage and local supplies that will provide even greater water supply reliability for Southern California. One of the things that I just learned is that we did focus group results from region-wide focus groups that we completed in April. And what we found is that there was virtually no drought fatigue, and that Southern California's plan to keep saving water. And they really acknowledged the good work that people had done. They wanted information on ways they could save more water. So we feel as though over the course of the past 3.5 years, we've made great strides in delivering the water saving message to Southern California. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Hey, thanks, Bob. Great stuff, and certainly the broad spectrum of communication skills that had to have been used across this. Having survived communicating the drought for the drought in Maryland here back in late 90s and early 2000s, I know exactly what you went through. So let me ask you this before I get to some of the other questions that are pending here. I have one that's been kind of nagging at the back of my mind is, how was receptivity from the public when they were told to cut back on their water use?
Well, I think, number one, the drought was top of mind. It's the first time in my career where people were talking about water. And that spans, like I said, nearly 3 decades, where it was, it was a cultural event. People knew how dry it was, they knew how hot it was, and they knew they needed to do more to pitch in, because they were ultimately, although we weren't using draconian measures, they knew that the need was real. And that's the main thing that we stressed. We had to have message continuity, but we also had to be consistent in throughout the state in delivering the message about how severe and unprecedented the drought was.
Yeah, I assume there was obviously so much attention to the drought going into this before you guys really had to start, making requests for action and that kind of thing, that people were already kind of sold on the fact that there was a significant drought.
Yeah, one thing that we have to keep in mind, is that we were in the 3rd-year drought before the need to conserve actually hit us in Southern California. We had made billions of dollars in investment in water storage, in water conservation and water recycling, which allowed us to build up those reserves as we headed into the drought. So it gave us a little bit of a cushion, whereas other parts of the state actually enforced mandatory conservation well before us. It wasn't until the summer of 2015 that actual mandatory conservation hit the Southland. And by that time, I think consumers and businesses realized just how important water saving was in order to maintain the viability of maintaining supplies.
Excellent, thank you. You know, this I was obviously a good excuse as any to get you guys on board with social media. So Jane has asked, now that you've increased your reach through social media, how often are you placing fresh content on your social media platforms, and are you continuing to use all of those platforms, um, or are you focusing on only a particular few at this point?
I would say we have a broad range of roles in all of those social media platforms. We keep our Facebook page updated. We tweet about 2 times a day. We also retweet throughout the day. We have someone that is dedicated. We have a social media manager that oversees that effort. We're venturing into Snapchat. Instagram is another portion of it. So I think now that we've seen the value of these social media platforms and the impressions that can be made, I think it's going to become even a more important tool as we go forward.
Excellent. Yeah, I know that you know, we get to find and reach much more audiences this way. Now that government has seemed to have understood the benefit of it and backed off of the fear of using social media, which is what we've found, you know, in most previous administrations. So, go ahead.
I mean, I mean, prior to 2014, there was a definite reluctance to have any kind of social media, any kind of Facebook visibility. There just seemed to be there was an appearance that there were much more inherent risks with putting yourself out there, with putting metropolitan out there. But as we ventured more and more into those various platforms, we saw the value almost immediately, and the response that we got was tremendous.
Yeah, that's what I think has helped to prove our point over the years to the naysayers and the folks that were afraid to put ourselves out there, mostly because they were afraid of not being able to control the comments that people might make on social media posts. So on that note, that's going to lead me into Catherine's question. She actually had 2 questions. One of which was, were all the groups receptive and engaged in the conservation process? And did you get information about the success between the cultural demographics, and how did you measure that?
Well, as part our ad firm, Quigley Simpson, based out of LA, had a number of subcontractors that were obviously well versed in the different cultural markets. We had experts in Korean language. We had experts in Chinese Mandarin, Vietnamese, Spanish language. They helped us craft a message for those specific audiences. So, I mean, I think you have to be cognizant that these different ethnicities, these different cultures have different ways that they receive the information and they process this information. And that's what our partners with the advertising campaign allowed us to achieve and hone. And that was very important because we had to adapt that. I mean, we're even seeing that, today. Our latest focus groups basically show whereas Latinos respond in one way, Mandarin-speaking folks are sensitive and are more prone to water saving. So it's something that I think we found to be very useful and will continue to be useful into the future.
Interesting. I know people's cultural backgrounds make a big difference. I was a Navy guy, so I'm used to taking those 7-second showers.
Yeah, we appreciate that. You should go to Southern California, put on an Adele song, and go to work in the shower. I obviously I didn't touch a lot on the press office work, which obviously I was able to accomplish along with my staff. But I can't tell you. I mean, it was eye-opening to see the role that these media platforms played and how it really expanded the use and the efficiency of our advertising dollar.
Did you find any in using your social media platforms, were you getting traditional media actually retweeting your content, or also helping to promote on their social media channels, your social media efforts as well?
What we find is that was really happening with print reporters more than anyone. With TV and radio, they want to actually be the destination. They didn't want to retweet our information. They'd rather us go online and want us to kind of make them a destination for their websites. We were able to do that. We retweeted quite a bit. They repackaged a lot of the information that we had on our site and conveyed it through their web portals. So we appreciated that. I think media was definitely engaged. I mean, the media interest was spectacular. Obviously, it reached international, national, local regions, but and with multi-language. But it was important that we also use media as a partner, earn media as a partner to get the word out.
Excellent. I know that we heard about it on our local news here in Washington, D.C. So there you go.
I can appreciate that.
I don't see any more questions pending from the audience. We'll give folks another moment or two, but is there anything that you'd like to add to the discussion, Bob? Some great takeaway that people in our profession can learn from your experience here?
Yeah, it's been an eye-opening experience to me. I was quite a social media newbie. I mean, I was kind of overwhelmed by the practice about the audiences that we would be dipping into, but very quickly I learned the value and the role that social media can play in delivering your message, particularly if you have a plan and you have continuity and consistency. I think it has great benefits. That's not to say I don't believe in the earned media as well. I mean, certainly our press office work was somewhat thankless. But it was spanned throughout the globe, but I was more impressed by the immersion of our messages carried out on social media.
Excellent. Actually, one more question did come in from John. So the question was, how did you wind up? You said you had done some stuff with some popular songs that had relation to water, and also used some celebrities as spokespersons. How did you go about doing that, and what kinds of hoops did you have to jump through to make that happen?
Our advertising firm put us in contact with Pandora and Euphoria, and we were able to bridge that gap. That gave us the licensing opportunities. Then we actually did our own research on what water-themed songs we wanted to have in the catalog. It was really something bridged by our advertising firm, but it was something that actually also earned media. It was picked up by television news and print radio as well. So it had many benefits. But it was really working with and thinking out of the box by our advertising firm to get that across. But it worked out well.
All right, excellent. I have no more questions here. So, Bob, I want to thank you very much. It's easy to see how you had become the Communicator of the Year for 2016. Like I said, we're going to be, we'll be not taking the crown away from you, but because you're still our 2016 communicator, but we'll be passing on the torch here in the, actually I shouldn't say torch around somebody who's dealt with a drought, should I? We'll be passing on that moniker to the next person here in the near future. So thank you for your time today. I hope to see some of your staff out at the NAGC Communications School in St. Louis in just a few weeks, June 13th to the 15th. And with nothing else pending, everyone, thank you again. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next webinar Wednesday. We're taking a break in June while we're all focused on the school, and we will see you back online in July. Take care.
Thank you.